Welcome to the Atheist and Christian Book Club. We're a monthly gathering of believers and skeptics respectfully, don't forget that, respectfully discussing important books from both perspectives. My name is James Walker. I'm president of Watchman Fellowship, a Christian apologetics organization defending the Christian faith. Our co-founder is Bill Cluck, a former Christian who's now an atheist. Bill, say hello.
Hello.
And we have a special, first time we've ever done this before, we have a special two authors present with us at the same time, both an atheist author and a Christian author, and they're here to discuss their books and also to answer our questions, and we're going to have a time where they can even ask themselves questions. Before I get to that, I do want to take a minute to talk to you about how many of you are new. This is your first time to be at the Atheist and Christian Book Club. That's about a good third of what I can see right now. We're leading back into two other rooms here. So, and just so we can see where we are on the Lamb's Book of Life, how many of you are Christians? Raise your hand if you're a Christian. Okay, raise your hand if you're an atheist.
Ask them how many of us are going to be in heaven.
How many
Look, the Catholics think that if you're a good person, you're going to heaven.
Okay.
So if I'm wrong, and if the Catholics are right, I'm going to be there.
I certainly would like to see you there, John, and I'll do everything I can to make sure that happens.
You just left me out there. That's all I'm saying. You just left.
Okay.
All right.
So we have that. That's a very new thing. I also want to introduce you to one new person. George. George is a student at New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. I am an adjunct professor there. I teach there like 4 days out of the year, I think. But he's on an internship with Watchman Fellowship, so he's going to be coming to the club, and he's also going to be writing a profile for Brady Hopes, and welcome George to the group.
Nice to meet you.
And I just want to say thanks for all the new people and that kind of thing. So I'm James Walker. I'm the Christian part of the co-founder. The other co-founder is Bill Cluck. He's a former Christian, now atheist, and I want him to take just a minute to tell you about one of our authors, John Loftus.
Yeah, John's written several books. The Christian Delusion, which is my favorite. Here's your magnum opus, Why I Became an Atheist. But what have you written? 10 books, John?
About 10 I've written 5 books. I've edited 5 others, and I got a new one coming out.
So he has 2 master's degrees. He studied under William Lane Craig. So this guy knows his stuff. One Christian author said, or someone said, he knows where the dead corpses are. So if you want to really know the objections to Christianity, the criticisms, the insights, you've got to read his books. And that's not just me saying, if you read the back of this, you have seminary professors that say, please read his books. I don't agree with them, but they're that good. Also, I
don't remember him saying that.
Oh, okay, well. But also, I'm going to talk about this a little bit more. His site is Debunking Christianity, which I started viewing 7 years ago. And here's the thing, we get Christian propaganda from the radio stations, the churches, the seminaries, so you're hit with Christian bias all the time. So it's nice to, if you look at that Debunking Christianity site, he has excellent blogs, and I always look forward to seeing what you have.
I could kiss you.
Oh.
Mark that. And nobody but my mother says things like that.
Well, this is the book that we're going to be discussing, one of his books, which is The Christian Delusion. This is actually Bill's personal copy, and I don't know if you can tell, it's more worn out than my Bible. I don't know if that's anything, but anyway, Bill has been from almost day one of the club pushing to try to do that book. Now, we did this book earlier this year, and so this is special treatment. We've never done this before. Let's come back and revisit one of the books, but have the author here this time. And so, John, thank you for being here with us. Really appreciate that.
James is a really nice guy, and he was really amicable about bringing me here. I thank you so much.
I'm not going to kiss you.
I kiss him.
Okay.
I kiss atheists.
You're safe. I'm safe for now. Okay. Also with us, and this is the first to do this, to have both authors here. We have Travis Dickinson. Travis Dickinson is has a PhD in philosophy. He is a professor in apologetics department at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, and he's one of the co-authors of the book Stand Firm. I don't have a prompt to hold up here, so let me borrow yours. I have the Kindle edition, but Stand Firm, along with Paul Gould and Keith Loftus. And so we looked at this book also earlier this year. So, and you were with us at that time, and we're both mainly trying to refocus on some of those chapters. But I want to say, welcome back to the Atheist and Christian Book Club, and we're going to have some questions for you in just a minute. Before we get started, I know you got people already chopping at the bit. You got good questions and stuff. I want to go ahead and talk about next month because I'm real excited about next month. Next month we alternate books typically, Christian book, atheist book. So it's time for a Christian book, and so we're going to be able to have some authors again with us. And so we're going to be looking at the story of the cosmos, and this is a book, beautiful, illustrated book from a Christian perspective. We're going to have two of the co-authors with us. Our own Daniel Ray, who's a longtime member of the book club.
He is.
Along with Alan Hainline, one of the other authors, is going to be with us and to be able to take your questions on that. Now, the book, and I'm going to send you out how to get the book and stuff like that, and more information about this is what we're going to be talking about. But I did want to have a little 60-second video I'd like to show you, which is a kind of a promotional kind of tease for what the book's all about. Are we ready for that?
Yep.
Okay.
The heavens are telling of the glory of God, and the expanse is declaring the work of his hands. As believers, we've heard it many times, but familiarity can make us forget. And since many of us can't even see the stars anymore, we've lost touch with God's glory in the universe. Do the stars still matter? Yes, they do. But the science of the heavens today is now dominated by ideas that take no account of God's glory. The story of the cosmos offers a much-needed reminder of how the heavens and life on earth go hand in hand. Come and see the heavens as they are meant to be seen, in art, in the latest planetary research, in history and philosophy. Come and see how God's celestial glory can and does still resonate with us today in the story of the cosmos.
Excited about that. Now, the only negative is it's a pretty expensive book with all the color photography. What's the retail on that?
It's 17 on Amazon right now.
Okay, 17 on Amazon, not so bad, but special that we're doing this time for you, and we've never done this before. We are going to make available, we've got a case of the books, and this is as a gift from Daniel Ray as well as Watchman Fellowship. We've gone in, and anybody who wants one, can't afford it, while they last. We have more people here than we have books, but right here on the shelf over here, if you want to pick up the book, Story of the Cosmos, and we will make that available to you. Also, if I could get you, Bill, to pass around the flyers for tonight, for next month.
Does anybody know how to open this?
Yeah. Okay.
Pen?
So,
We're doing.
you get that?
We'll get it.
Okay. So, let me talk about again about tonight. We're going to have a time for both authors to ask each other questions. So both of them have read the portions of the book that we're focused on, and I think they have some questions for each other. We're going to give you time a little bit later this evening to ask each other questions. I want to give you a chance. Also, those who are watching on Facebook Live, Jim Hall of Atheist Edge is monitoring the comments. So you can, if you have a question for the author, one of the authors, or you want to make a comment, we'll be watching that as well, and we'll try to get that input. But before we, see if you have that, Bill.
Yeah.
Before we take any questions of the group, or before I ask the questions I'd like to, one of our guys who is a regular member of the club who was unable to be here, he's out of the country, is Mike Cahill. And he had a question for both of you. It might be a great place to start. It's about epistemology, or how do we know what we know? And so I want, if Bill could share that question with us.
How do we know what we know? Loftus seems to say only science, while Dickinson has a much more positive view of history. Not biased at all. What counts as legitimate evidence? You want to go? Either way.
Happy to go first, yeah.
I like that because then I can rebut you.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I think you might agree in some ways. 'Cause
Also, not from reading your book, I don't think.
Okay. I would say how do we know what we know would be on the basis of good evidence. Now, we're going to differ on what we mean by evidence, and that's my area is to do epistemology in doing philosophy. And so there are big debates in that, at that level on exactly how to understand evidence. So this is where we may disagree. I'm fairly broad-minded when it comes to what counts as evidence. But I want to say in just a general sense, I would define it as anything that indicates the truth of some belief. So anything that indicates, now you can have just a little bit of evidence or you can have a lot of evidence, but whatever indicates the truth of your belief. So things like experiences, things like philosophical arguments, things like science, scientific data would indicate the truth of various beliefs. I think that all counts as evidence.
Can I get a clarification?
Please?
When you say anything, because I have people having all kinds of subjective impressions that they declare to be evidence, that their feelings somehow count as evidence.
Yeah, so I don't think...
I argue that
Good question.
Evidence must be factual.
And what does that mean for you?
Something that can be objectively verified.
What you're saying.
Verified by something else? So you always have to have some
Verified
further
not
verification?
just in a particular person's impression, but external to that personal subjective impression. Multiple other people can also verify that when that person claims something to be a fact, we can all verify that it is in fact.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough criterion to stick with in all things. That it has to be, this sort of verificationist approach.
No one's talking here about the verificationist approach which was disputed in the 60s. And I know what you're talking about. Others may not know.
Okay.
We're not talking about the
So what's the verification?
Well, it's simple. It's simple.
Okay.
If we talk,
You're asking for a verificationist, but we don't have to. We don't.
No, I'm just saying. I think your criterion will prove to be too strong. That you always have to have it verified by outside sources.
Well,
Let me do that again real quickly. Let me just show
When
that.
somebody makes a claim of truth, we have to be able to show that the thing that they're talking about is actually true. It doesn't have to be verificationist.
Well, let me just so everybody's on the right page and all. This is Aaron Ra. Aaron Ra is a well-known atheist speaker.
I love that man.
He's famous on the internet, as I believe. He's told me that. So actually, I've seen you on the internet too. So I don't think you're that. But he was the very first author that we had in the book club at the very beginning. He was kind enough. We were just getting started to come out and share about the book. We were looking at one of his books. He heard about the club. He asked if he could come. So you were the first on that, Aaron. And I want to say thank you. And did you have something to...
Well, I was just saying, I think that standard will be very difficult. I do want it to be an objectively indicative of truth. So whatever it is that counts as evidence needs to be objectively indicative of truth. However, something like the fact that I'm in pain, if I believe that I'm in pain, that is justified, good enough evidence. It's just the mere fact that I'm in pain, I'm experiencing that need not be verified by other people.
But you understand that if you actually feel physical pain, that can be objectively verified by your doctors.
How's that?
There are a number of ways of them
Isn't that a subjective feeling?
No. You may feel the pain yourself, but there are other ways of verifying that you are feeling pain.
But I don't think you need to. That's the point. If you feel like you need to verify that you're in pain by doctors, then your criterion is way too strong.
If you're talking about a congested opinion, right, or a contested opinion.
We're not talking about contested opinion. We just said what is evidence.
Okay.
And I've given a definition of
So if
evidence.
you want to state a fact, your subjective impression is not already a fact just because you said it.
But you're just pushing the argument back one step.
I didn't say it's just...
Wait, let's hear what John has to say since he's on the
I'd like to hear the
okay, so-
response from John.
Listen, apologists love to deal in definitions. If you want to define pornography, for instance, the Supreme Court has defined it in three-point criteria, which apparently is irrelevant now because pornography is prevalent. But I know that in the 70s it was a big deal how to define pornography. It's hard to define pornography. It's hard to define a lot of things. Socrates went around asking people to define piety, justice, truth, love, and he found the sophists didn't know. They ended up saying, well, I really don't know, and so Socrates blasted them for not knowing because they claimed to know. So he was the one who didn't know, and that's why he was considered the wisest person alive, according to the Delphic articles, the Delphic prophecies. Peter Barkhosian, which he quotes in his book, says faith is pretending to know what you don't know. And that goes perfectly with what Socrates was showing of the sophists, claiming to know what they didn't know by claiming they knew how to define these things. Now here's what apologists do. They define things. They want to talk about what's pain and what isn't pain, when the real issue is how we know a virgin gave birth to a deity. And so if they can sidetrack us into these discussions, and we can gerrymander around them for an hour trying to define epistemology, which philosophers themselves dispute, then they can sidetrack the issue of how we know a virgin gave birth to a deity.
I was asked the question, what counts as legitimate evidence? So I'm curious what your answer
What is legitimate evidence, John?
Both of us.
I prefer to talk in terms of concrete examples.
Go for it, but answer the question, what counts as legitimate evidence?
I only answer the questions that are relevant. If the question isn't relevant, I don't care about it.
If I may.
No, wait, please.
Yeah, finish.
Because the issue is how you know a virgin gave birth to a deity. And you're not going to sidetrack me from that, because Matthew's gospel, and you know this, Matthew's gospel says that Joseph was convinced in a dream. It's very explicit, very, very forthright, very, very blatant. It says that Joseph was convinced that Mary gave birth to a deity because of a dream. It's very, very, very plain as day that Joseph was convinced Mary was telling the truth because he had a dream. Now here's the point. Matthew thought that was relevant evidence, so he included it into his gospel. So what you have is Mary's testimony, if we can believe it, given that virgin births were claimed of Hercules, Augustine, Caesar Augustus, and Plato. What you have to do is say, why would I believe Mary's testimony alone when the only person who could collaborate it was convinced of a dream? And that's not the kind of evidence we need when it comes to a miracle.
Here's my issue with that, and
please.
No,
go ahead. Why, you don't want to respond?
No, go ahead.
There was no challenge. Right.
I mean, saying that my evidence has to be validated by somebody else, well, then the same question is, how did they know it's valid? You're just pushing the argument back.
Concrete examples.
It really doesn't matter whether you're talking about
concrete examples. How do you know
that Mary defining that? I'm not hearing you define that.
Because in order
so do the earth is round instead of virgin birth.
In order to define evidence, you have to start with concrete examples. And the concrete example of what he wants to define evidence has to do with one example in particular is how we know that Mary gave birth to a deity. And you don't want to deal with that, right?
Oh no, I'm happy to deal with it.
Because you weren't asked that. But I'm asking you.
We're trying to start with the bigger picture.
I'm asking you that.
Because when you say concrete, you're really not. I'm not hearing a definition of that.
Did Mary give birth to a deity?
Has to be concrete.
Is a body of objectively verifiable facts which are positively indicative of or exclusively concordant with one available conclusion or hypothesis over any other.
Well, Travis, could we say that Mary being a virgin, we only have third-party testimony, we don't have eyewitnesses? Could that be weak evidence, would you say?
It could be.
Especially since we know that the
I'm fine with
translation
that.
is inaccurate. So she's an unmarried maiden, not necessarily a virgin.
I gave a view, I was trying to answer the question that was asked, and I think evidence is messy, right? So it's like, it's
Yes, it
degreed.
is.
You have more or less evidence.
Not when it comes to virgin birth.
You always have a kind of a gap, I think, from all, at least some of our empirical claims. There'll always be a gap where we could be wrong about these
Right.
things. I'm happy.
I just want to
Bob, yeah, I had a question.
I just want to throw something out here, and I'm having a bit of difficulty with this conversation.
Me too.
And the reason why am I not surprised? And the reason I'm having difficulty with this is, let's just gloss over as fast as I can what's been talked about. If I go to the doctor and say I'm in pain, I don't have to prove I'm in pain. I tell him I'm in pain. That's my reality, and he treats me based on my reality. Now, when we come to the Bible, if someone believes in the Bible verbatim, that's their reality. They really don't have to prove it. They believe it, and that's their reality. But here's the problem that I
I think
have.
those are the same, being in pain and the truths of the Bible. Are those are realities?
I always have the Bible page
Well,
full, so yeah.
hear me out. Hear
Okay,
me out.
yeah, I don't
Okay?
see those as parallel. I'm just-
Because I could debate on both sides of the fence, and probably more so on the fact that the Bible is not the absolute truth. But I could, if I wanted to, debate on both sides. But the fundamental bottom line is, it's about belief. It's about belief. Because we're talking about verification at different levels. And there are some things in the Bible that are just not 100% without doubt verifiable.
Right.
Okay? Now, based on the fact that the bottom line is belief, and based on the fact that when I tell the doctor I'm in pain, it's my reality and I don't have to prove it, he will treat me based on that. We now have the third issue, which is my problem. If the Bible is not 100% bottom line verifiable, and it's being presented by an apologist who, number one, will defend the Bible through argumentation or what is necessary, but the next step is they will try and convert someone to Christianity, and that's based on the Bible. Now you're jacking with someone's life on something that's not truly bottom line
Right.
verifiable, and I have.
Well,
a
let's take
problem
an
with that.
example.
I have
Let's
a
take an
problem
example,
with
Bob.
that.
Jesus walking on the water, which was probably an oral testimony that Mark and Matthew, I think it's in all the synoptics, right? Is that good evidence? Because we don't have a videotape saying, hey, Jesus, could you walk one more time this way?
Yeah.
Do you say, but is that good enough
Yeah,
evidence for
so
us?
what I want to say is that with a discrete account like that, I don't actually approach it that way. So I tend to go this way, that I want to talk first about it just in terms of not trying to, again, avoid your question at all, just to say I get at Scripture in terms of its general reliability first. And then at that point, in other words, there's a whole logical priority to all this, where the evidence, and I do want to address your question because I think it's a really good one, that there's a logical priority, and I don't kind of get to that point until I become convinced that the Bible is inspired by God, honestly. So I don't even worry about the walking on the water bit until I've already got the resurrection bit, until I've already got a kind of general...
By the way, John's coming out with a book, what, next month, John?
It should be at the end of October. It's called the Case Against Miracles. It was in process a year ago before Lee Strobel came out with his. It has a foreword written by Michael Shermer, who says, I've read a lot on these issues, but I've learned more from reading this one book than the
So he talks about David Hume and so forth. And now let me ask you,
Sum total of all
can we?
question back here.
Yeah, let's not go too far off field before.
Well, no, I just wanted to ask you real quick. Do we have enough evidence from the historical testimony of the gospel writers to believe Jesus walked on the water?
We can't. I mean, it's impossible. But and here's, I'll tell you what. And any reasonable person should agree. And that is, we've never seen anybody walk on the waters. In fact, you step on the water, you fall. The universal.
Worse than that, we have earlier stories where Indra, in Hindu mythology, walked on water. Every miracle that is attributed to Jesus was already done by some other guy in some other religion.
So not only is it borrowed, not possibly borrowed, It's that we fall whenever we walk in the water. Everybody does. Everybody testifies. Some people drown. So you have this universal testimony that you can't walk on water, right? And so on the other hand, you have people who say, we saw Jesus walk in the water. Now, who are these people? We don't actually know. I mean, we don't know anything about them. We don't have any eyewitnesses to that. We don't have any eyewitnesses to the resurrection. What we have are two documents, Mark and Luke. Well, okay, include Matthew and John, but they borrowed.
I want to specify, we're talking about walking the water.
Right, walking the water.
Not running really fast.
Well, I've seen snowmobiles try it, really fast snowmobiles. But so you have to say to yourself, what are the odds that somebody actually walked on the water, given the universal testimony throughout the ages that people will write.
The David Hume argument, which I'm sure you're familiar with. So what's your answer to that?
So again, I think we talked about this a bit last time, is Hume's argument is not very well regarded in philosophical circles. And the reason is because, again, we have this whole body of evidence that's being brought to bear on that issue that then, following the logical progression, we can get there. But to leave aside all the sort of prior probabilities that figure into these probability calculations.
Like what?
Like that God exists.
And so it's based on background knowledge, correct?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, background. Now, where does your background knowledge come from? Your birth? Your indoctrination? What? Knowledge is only knowledge if it has the probabilities to it based on the objective evidence. Otherwise, it's not really knowledge. It's opinion, it's a feeling, it's indoctrination. Where's the background? If you have background knowledge, then talk about the background. What kind of background knowledge you have that thinks that God exists in order to do what He does?
Well, I just say the evidence, right? See, this book probably, I haven't looked at it, but I'm guessing lots of evidence.
That evidence is consistent.
Or
that evidence
that God exists.
That evidence is consistent with your faith. It doesn't confirm it, because the Muslims believe it. Muslims could read it and say, okay. The Hindus could. Jehovah's Witnesses could. No, it's consistent, not confirming. Confirming means it confirms my particular faith.
Well, John, I think just briefly what both of you are saying, and even to what Aaron is
saying. You agree with me? I don't want to hear it.
No. I think what is at the heart of what we're all talking about is the first act is trust. In order to know. No. Verify. Trust but verify. Trust but verify. Well, it's what I think it's Augustine, Travis. I trust so that I may know. And so there's a fiduciary act that every human being has to make in some kind of source or background knowledge, some kind of substantive position of truth. You have to trust. Like I would have to trust you that you're telling me the truth. I would have to trust.
Don't verify it. I'm asking you to verify it.
We relate to Bob's take on this, but to me it kind of begs the question. Okay, did miracles happen? If by definition you say this is something that probably didn't happen, therefore it didn't happen. Well, it wouldn't be a miracle if it happens every day. By definition, a miracle has to be something very, very rare that doesn't naturally happen.
Which makes it impossible to verify. I mean, okay, so all historians have are the probabilities. If you're going to be a historian, I'm a historian, I'm going to look at history. What are the probabilities? That a miracle happened or it didn't. Now, a historian, if he's a historian, and the historians conclude this, that didn't happen. Why? Because there's other alternatives, even if we can't explain it, because we can't explain the miracle, right? That's how historians work. So probabilities are against miracles. We know this. So in order to say a miracle happened is to go against the probabilities. We know this.
That is true, right?
That to me is the whole problem of defining it that way. Right. So I want to investigate. And I used this example, I think, 2 book clubs ago. But if I'm hired by the government, I'm supposed to investigate Roswell, New Mexico. Were there aliens there? And I know there's no such thing as aliens. The odds are 1,000,000 to 1 against it. So I can do my research without ever having to get on a plane because I know those things don't happen. So by definition, I've already ruled out. So I'm not a objective.
But here's what's problematic, Travis, is you have one gospel that has Jesus alone walking on the water, and then you have another one where Peter is walking on the water. So when you have inconsistencies within the Gospels, doesn't that undermine the credibility of your case?
So I think you have differences, but not necessarily inconsistencies. In other words, those two stories can easily be put together as two different sort of perspectives on the same event, right? Isn't that okay? So not like straightforwardly contradictory or straightforwardly inconsistent, and that's what I think you get.
I agree with that on that.
You get a
We're making progress.
Yeah, this is
No progress is
not
made.
Well,
right. You get these differences of details all throughout, but I would argue that each of those could be put together harmoniously.
Not the resurrection, though. Most people who have actually studied the resurrection, and this is we're really bleeding into other issues. Most people who study the resurrection narrative say it's impossible to create a harmony. In fact, Dan Barker
from the Free Foundation has issued it. I'm the chapter president.
Go.
He has issued a challenge, and no one's been able to answer it.
Right.
To write the whole resurrection narrative from beginning to end, and it's impossible to be done if you to include all the details, because so many of them contradict each other.
And please give your name and what you do.
I am Randall Theo. I am the president of the Texas chapter
He's an amazing person.
of the Freedom from Religion Foundation.
Because he's on my side.
Travis, you would have to agree.
Kiss me later.
This, in Mark, you have our most unvarnished, bare bones gospel. You have the women come to the tomb, they go and tell nobody. You have no post-resurrection appearances, no fish fry at the Sea of Tiberias, no, road to the Emmaus thing. Doesn't it make sense that 15 years later, Matthew and Luke start to add stories? Does this make sense, John?
It makes sense to me!
Okay, well, does that make sense?
I think that's possible, but I don't think that we're forced into that reading, right? So I think that I'm not trying to say, no, that's crazy to think. I'm just saying,
thank you.
I think that when you do the history, you're not forced into saying, therefore they absolutely made it up, right? So I think it's still perfectly able to be made consistent. All these datings are argued. So
of course.
Does Mark come first? It's not universally agreed that it does.
Y'all don't believe in Mark and priority?
No, I think that I probably lean that way, but I'm just saying that this is a thing that's up for debate. So
there's no Q either, right?
What's that?
There's no Q.
Not extent. Sure.
You don't agree? You agree with me that there's no such thing as a Q?
Nobody knows.
There's no surviving document that we call Q.
But do you believe in Q? You believe there's an oral testimony
that's an
important agreement.
It's one of those, and I mentioned this before, that it's you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Mark's the shortest gospel. Therefore, all the other synoptics and John have to have information that's not in John. Mark's the shortest gospel. So you have two choices. That when it agrees, then you say, well, obviously the synoptics are copying from Mark because it's identical.
Right.
So it's therefore bogus because it's copied.
They disagree.
If it differs, he's making up new facts.
Yeah, but this.
So which way do you want it?
Well,
you want it to be exact
this is the
copy, or do you want it
extreme,
to be-
and I think you'll agree with me on this.
I don't know.
Mark,
Until I hear you.
Mark says, what does Jesus say? He talked to his inner circle, his disciples, in parables. In John, and he has short aphorisms, like given to Caesar's what is Caesar's. He's very quick and short. In John, you have these long discourses like, I'm the vine, you are the branches. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. I'm the way, the life, and the truth. Certainly you don't believe Jesus said those things in John, right? Those long discourses?
I did.
Let's do this. We do have something coming in from Facebook Live, and
No one's asking any questions. I had one myself.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. You're looking at your phone, so that's what.
I know, but if anyone in the live chat, there was 18 watching. Now there's 12, so we got some live viewers. So
okay.
Ask some questions.
Yeah, let me just make that announcement. If you're watching on Facebook Live, you have a question for one of the authors, or you just want to make a comment, Jim's monitoring that for us.
There might be a lot of comments, but no questions.
Okay. Jim is the head of Atheist Edge.
No, I'm just a co-host.
A co-host of Atheist Edge. I'm sorry.
There's 4 of us, and we're all equal partners.
Okay.
But yeah, Atheist Edge.
Atheist Edge.
On YouTube. Like, subscribe, share.
And you have a question.
Yeah, for Travis. If the Christology was flipped, let's say John was the original, would that make your life a lot easier?
No. I don't think it makes any different at all.
It's not,
why would it make it easier?
You should agree with him and say, next question.
Because 95% of Mark is found in Matthew, and 65% of Mark is found in Luke. But if it were flipped, the Christology was kind of an inverted pyramid.
I would like that if I were a Christian.
Yeah, you got God.
You started with
say yes.
John
What's wrong?
that was written, no one in this room would argue it was written any later than, if John were the same, Mark was written around 65,
Okay.
70, right? That's the consensus. But if John was written around then,
No,
just shortly
my
after
view-
Jesus' death.
My view would be to say that each of these represent different perspectives, have different agendas, have different audiences that they're writing to.
He's got that right.
And so they are more elaborate for their sort of inherent reasons within the text themselves. So I don't think it's just, well, they get more and more detailed as they get older, or as we get later, right? I just think of it as these are each 4 different perspectives writing at different times for different audiences, and for whatever reason, there were reasons to do longer or shorter, pithier, or more elaborate versions.
Mark is very, just tiny statements, it almost reads like a Twitter feed, it's just bang, bang, bang. And I think if it was first, which is what I lean to, then that gets circulated, and all these people are saying, well, what did he do right after that? And why did he say this? Well, there was much more. The Sermon on the Mount wasn't one paragraph. It was longer than that, and so it would be a natural expectation on my part to find the later gospel writers filling in more detail to answer those questions. Oh, well, this is what he said after it, and oh, well, now I understand that part.
And that's my point. There's other reasons we can imagine for them being longer or shorter or having different purposes.
What about the I ams in John's Gospel, the 7? I am the way, the truth, and life, the 7.
Wouldn't that be the most important thing Mark would have said?
Wouldn't that be, or the Lord's Prayer? It's not in Matthew, or it's not in Mark. Then we have to wait till other Gospels. But the I ams particularly, it seems like wow, those are so memorable. You know, I am the way, the truth, and life. But no, they didn't.
How do you not put
or
that
the Lord's Prayer? The Lord's Prayer.
You'd have to ask Mark.
I know.
I want to go a little different direction.
Let me say first on that, just a quick answer to that is, the way I look at it is, when you're, if there's an inspiration, which is, the Christians assume that, then God is ultimately in charge of what's going to get in there, not through dictation, but by, as the gospel writers write what they write, he wants to get all the information out. Should he have taken some of the I ams and sprinkled them in Mark, some of the I am statements and put them in Luke, but the fact that he put them all in John, that makes it somehow invalid.
You're absolutely correct, except you're going backwards. It would seem like if on the one hand, God can do what he wants, right? You sprinkle him where he wants. On the other hand, if you're looking for evidence that there's a God and that these sayings were actually spoken by Jesus, you would think the memorable ones would be.
Now, John, you're not telling me if the I am statements were in Mark, you'd be a Christian right now.
Absolutely.
There you go. I want to say real quick.
We're talking about a first century faith healer who didn't understand the actual the causes of the things that he was pretending to heal. He believed in demons. He wasn't even able to cure blindness in every case. We are talking about somebody that is effectively no different than any of the modern faith healers we have today, who had absolutely no comprehension of the things that he was intending to address.
I would call that a low
We are talking
Christology.
about a charlatan, a century fraud. That's it. That's all. Why was he not respected?
Well, I didn't know you- I didn't-
Because the people knew that he was full of shit.
Well,
That's why.
Listen, Aaron, we are trying to be respectful, but
I am being respectful.
I didn't think that you believed in Jesus. Let me say first on Aaron, I didn't think you believed Jesus existed at all.
The version of Jesus that we're talking about today is like the version of Robin Hood or King Arthur that we talk about.
The version of Jesus in the Gospels didn't
no
exist.
relationship to the actual Robin Hood or King Arthur, if either one of those characters existed.
Yeah, when you say Travis,
If you were to find the 4 different people that are at the basis of the modern concept of Jesus and bring them forward in a TARDIS to show them Jesus Christ Superstar, none of them would recognize that that story was supposed to be about them.
by the way, Travis, when you say
Let's
that,
go ahead and get from Facebook
You got it.
I
Live.
got a question for the live chat from Joshua Chappell. This question to John. If the first 300 years of Christianity existed and flourished without the completed New Testament, why target the New Testament as the primary reason to resist Christianity?
did you get that?
You want me to read it again?
Read it again for
If the
us.
first
No, I'm targeting the final product. I'm asking the final product that we have that was canonized in the Chalcedon creeds, that's what I'm looking at, and I'm looking at how we know that's telling stories that we can believe, regardless of whether it's reliable. Let's say for instance, that people pass on a story, they say it's reliable because so and so told me, so and so told me, so and so told me, and we've done that reliably. No, if they're telling me about a bizarre story about some three-handed dragon that breathes fire. No, I don't care whether the story has been transpired reliably or not. I'm asking myself, what? I mean, I'm asking myself, and I think the virgin birth stories like that. I think the resurrection stories like that. I think the stories in the Bible are like that. I'm asking myself, why should I believe the story itself? I don't care if it's been translated and transpired.
Transmitted.
Why should we believe the Gospels when they're so contradictory?
See, again, I don't think.
Oh, you don't think? Okay, you've been through that. I wanted to say something about your blog. There was a guy named Marty Sampson, who's the worship leader.
This is all in the news right now. If you've been
of Hillsong Church, and it's a really interesting thing. He says, "My faith is on shaky ground." So he's listening to. He read Matt Dillahunty, the great Aaron Ra, and others, Dan Barker, and our own John Loftus, and he's listening to these guys, and he says, "You guys make great arguments."
And Marty what was his job? Tell him.
Music leader or whatever with Hillsong Church.
Hillsong is for those who don't know, one of the largest.
Which is coming to Dallas.
Largest.
It's like going to a rock and roll concert. But anyway, here's the thing. Is Mike Licona and Gary Habermas, which are friends of James Habermas, is trying to build up his faith and has had extensive talks with him.
So we had a 4-way conversation. Habermas, Licona, Marty Simpson, and myself. That wasn't recorded,
right?
Unless they.
But you tried to. You were saying good luck with your.
Oh yeah, Marty. Whatever you decide, fine. Decide for yourself. But I'm going to tell you what I think, and so it was like basically me against Licona. And
one of the clips in the news about him is that he said. He's talked about the problem of evil. If God is good, then why is there so much evil in the world? And how come nobody's ever noticed this before or said anything about it? And I'm thinking, he's just unfamiliar with the hundreds and hundreds of books that have been written on this topic. And the bottom line is, if you choose not to read, it's the same as being illiterate.
So Mike Licona and his wife, there's a video, What's Up with Marty Sampson, did a great 20-minute video, and it was so insightful because Mike Licona said it's okay to have doubts. It's all right. You don't have to have all the answers. And his dad said, what do you think the chances are that Christianity is true? Oh, well, it's about an 80%, Mike said. He goes, what? And his dad said, if it's not 100%, he was like a 10-point Calvinist. He goes, then they didn't talk for ages. So my question to you, Travis, is it okay to have doubts?
Oh, man.
How does somebody get to an 80%?
So
well, wait, let's listen to Travis.
The name of my blog, I don't know if you know this.
I do.
Is called The Benefit of the Doubt.
So
that's my sort of my thing, is that I think that doubt is this super valuable thing. I agree. I think what he's going through is a very valuable thing, because it's clear, as what James was saying, that he hasn't thought about these things before. So he's thinking about these things is probably going to cause him to struggle some, and he's going to come out one way or the other, and we'll see how it ends up.
Travis, wouldn't it be better for the churches to inoculate their members and actually teach them something besides just being hip and being cool and doing your little community group?
I'm sure he agrees.
I think everybody.
Amen.
Right now. And let me say this on the doubting. I've had doubts. The only Christians who don't have doubts are the ones who don't think. If you think, you're going to have doubts. But I would say it's also a virtue for atheists to have doubts. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's how we got to be the way we are.
I have a question about doubt. So you're talking about that Christians have doubt.
Yeah.
I was a Christian for 40 years, and I had doubt.
You look 40.
Thank you.
I'm serious. Can I kiss you?
I'm 54, but I was a Christian who eventually gave in to my doubt and realized that what I was believing wasn't real. I'm being told now by Christians I wasn't really a Christian. So if doubting is a normal thing for Christians, then how can you always have, it sounds like to be a real Christian, you always come back to faith. And if you give in to your doubt, then you never were a Christian.
Is that true? Was he ever, or John, you know?
I don't know. I'm happy to say I don't know. I have no idea.
But
so here's what I would say: is you held to, taking you at your word, you held to Christian beliefs.
Yes.
And that I can be
raised a Christian daughter.
Yeah, and I get that, and I affirm that. Whether or not genuine Christian, it's not for me to say. I have no idea, and I don't know.
But here's what's problematic: is people like John Loftus or Ken Daniels.
Depends what we mean by genuine Christian.
You got a missionary.
If you genuinely believe in Christian doctrine, I say yes.
But here's the former missionary in the place. Ken? Stand up, Ken. Former missionary.
I love Ken.
But here's the thing, Travis. These aren't, okay, me, you can say, oh, he was a halfway Christian.
No, I don't know.
What I'm saying is, Ken Daniels and John Loftus, these are serious Christians. How gun-ho were you?
I'm more serious than he is, just so you know.
Do you see what I'm saying? They're A-plus Christians. They are Christians all in. He was a missionary.
It's a technical question, though. When you say true Christian, I'm not thinking, were you sincere? Okay, sincere, there's no question.
Sure.
Were you a true Christian in the sense that you actually were born again from a Christian perspective?
Can't answer that. No, give Ken.
You certainly thought you were.
I think it's
I was.
human
Yeah, me too.
Human psychology that if somebody leaves a group, the group is going to tend to want to second guess the former commitment of the person who left.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether you're a Mormon or evangelical or Hindu or whatever it is. If you leave that group, your motives,
They hate
your
apostates.
state of mind is.
Would that be true of atheists too?
But I'm not questioning your commitment. I'm not questioning your commitment. Like I want to affirm to say, I bet you were 100% committed if that's what you say.
Right,
you
but
were.
you don't think I have a true relationship with Jesus. That's the problem.
Well, you don't believe that
You don't
Jesus
know.
is out there to have a relationship with, right?
Not anymore, but I certainly
Yeah,
did.
it certainly did. So I guess I'm not clear on the complaint. If you don't believe that there's Jesus there to have a relationship with now, like what's the complaint? I guess
That I was never a Christian before, and I
think you were in terms of your
I will go to
commitment,
hell.
your sincerity.
Now I will now burn in hell for eternity
Yeah.
because I chose that the facts that I saw as a Christian weren't real.
Let's just say
But I-
let me just say this.
Let's
I
just
think-
think about the fact that
Let me
there's
just say
no
this. I
evidence
think
to
the-
imply-
Let's hear from Ken real quickly.
Let me just say that I think the tendency to doubt the relationship that one had with Jesus when one was previously in the faith is a way to marginalize them. It's a way to discount or their legitimacy to be able to speak or their platform. It's a way of dissing them.
Yeah, and I totally get that, and I don't want it to sound like I'm marginalizing him. I just so you know my heart in this.
The other thing, we don't want to be committing a fallacy. There's a fallacy. In fact, it was developed, I believe, from Antony Flew, who was a well-known atheist philosopher who became a theist shortly before his death. But he developed years earlier what he called the no true Scotsman fallacy. And that is, basically, somebody says, no true Scotsman would do so-and-so. And he said, well, here's a true Scotsman. Well, here's a Scotsman. Well, he's not a true Scotsman. So what happens is, anytime you violate the rule, you just marginalize the person by saying they're not a true whatever. And so we don't want to be guilty of that fallacy. But for us, it's a real technical question. I don't know, half the people in my church, I don't know. And I think I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think what Travis was saying is, your perspective of your Christianity now, you didn't have a real relationship with a real person. You would acknowledge that. And I think sometimes we would tend to want to agree with you. You didn't have a real relationship with a real person.
Well, John, how committed were you to...
commitment is not the question.
Well, okay, why do you think you were really a Christian?
I wasn't.
Oh, okay, that's
Because there are no Christians. I mean, there are no Christians in the sense that there's no Christ to believe in, there's no God to believe in.
That's exactly what our point is.
But
if there's no God, then you weren't.
I believed in Christianity. I believed in Christ. I believed in God. I believed in things that didn't exist. I believed intensely. I was ordained in a church in Fort Wayne. I went to Bible college. I went to master's studies. I was a minister for 14 years. I preached the gospel. I preached.
Defended the Christian faith apologetically?
Yes, yeah. I was a wannabe apologist. I mean, that's all I want to say. I wasn't really an apologist because I guess I didn't have a PhD.
But studied under Bill Craig.
Yeah. So I was a believer, and if I wasn't saved, nobody's saved. That's my opinion. But Ken.
Yeah. So I think there's a theological aspect to this coming from verses like is it 2 John or is it 1 John? They went out from us. They never. If they had been of us, they would have never left us. So right there, theologically, you have to believe that we were somehow different from you, because we left, right? So I guess my complaint is that even though you don't know what that difference is, in your heart you believe there's some difference fundamentally that separates us from you,
and just
now we've left.
A lot of new people here, a lot of people on Facebook. Can you just real quickly, Ken was one of our atheist authors that we looked at.
Amazing person.
And has worked with John Loftus for years and years, but before you were an atheist, you were not just a Christian, but you were a Wycliffe missionary, Bible translator, working for Bible translation for that purpose in, what was it, West Africa?
In Niger, yes.
Yes, and so could you just mention that so everybody knows the context of what we're talking about?
Right, you did a good job already. So.
Well, I mean, you could give some more to that, but you were certainly, I mean, you gave up,
Yeah, my wife is still a believer, and so I live. It's kind of a tightrope. So I'm not super active.
Otherwise, he'd be a firebrand atheist and blasting all Christians, but he's held back.
I think the pastoral issue here is that you want to make people who are currently Christians be assured that they will ultimately be saved. Their salvation is secure. They have eternal security.
Look, the title of the book is Stand Firm.
People to believe that, and yet people like me, people like John, people like Aaron Rock, I guess he was Mormon, so that doesn't count maybe. You want people to believe that they are 100% secure and that they can never
stand firm.
They can never leave the faith. They can never lose their salvation. I believed that too, right? And I had what I considered was a relationship with Jesus. I poured my heart out to God every day. Praise God, prayer, you name it. I firmly believed that I was the apple of God's eye, right?
And the name of your book is Why I Believe.
That everybody who's a Christian now believes and experiences, right?
Okay,
so the experience is the same. So you cannot give people assurance that their salvation is going to endure to the end. And as soon as they leave the faith while they're still living, you can accuse them of being believed.
So what do you think of that, Travis? What do you think?
And that's why I say I hope I'm clear, because I feel like maybe some of what I've said didn't come out very clearly. I'm not trying to accuse anybody of anything. I'm saying I don't know. So maybe you're saved right now. I don't know. Maybe you're still saved. I don't know.
Are you Calvinist?
I'm not fully Calvinist. I'm kind of a
5 point. I mean, the fifth point. The fifth point.
Do you agree there's
So you won't know whether I'm so saved at the end,
Do you
right?
agree that there's a pastoral issue if you have a view that of eternal security, that somebody is secure in their faith and wants to?
No, I think their security is had in the fact that they follow hard after Christ. And so what I would say is everybody can be secure by following hard after Christ.
Right.
And if somebody
That depends on your
follow hard after,
Follow hard.
That's soft.
Discipleship.
Hard.
We want to hear from Ron in just a second, but before we do, I think we have another online question or
Yeah, and
comment.
we got 6 minutes before the break?
Go ahead.
Which is a good
We have
thing
a break?
because
Go ahead.
this is a question that's going to lead us down another rabbit hole.
We might have to table the question.
Thanks so much,
Ken.
I appreciate you so
I want to
much.
hear it, though.
Oh, it's what we beat this dead horse a million times at the book club. Matthew Smith asked for John, why is murder wrong in a naturalistic worldview?
Because murder's wrong.
Well, we will table that for now, and we can deal with the ethics of that in a little bit. But Ron, do you have something for us?
No, I was just pointing at Jim.
Okay, that was all you were trying to do.
I have lots of opinions.
So John,
share one of them.
Nothing particular.
Okay.
John, are you a naturalist? Would you say you're a naturalist?
Yes.
So you think all properties are natural properties? Is a moral property a natural property?
Yes, it has to be.
So how do you work that out? Because
Well,
it looks like a normative property rather than a
not.
natural property.
It's not.
It gives one obligation to do something. It's not descriptive of the world.
My turn. Do you understand cultural relativism? No, I mean, I'm serious. Do you understand it?
I think so.
Well, cultural relativism is the idea that we are in social tribes, we're in social groups, we're in cultural groups, and in order to be a member of the cultural groups, we have to like get along. We have to like love the people close to us. I mean, it's not really. Actually, that's not correctly stated.
Okay.
I do love the people close to us.
Are you a relative? Is that what you're saying?
I'm a cultural relative.
You're cultural relatives. Okay.
I have a wife. I have 2 brothers. I have 2 kids, and my wife has 5 kids, and we have like 11 grandchildren. Tell me I have to love them? No, I do. I mean, I just do, and that's what I do. And so I can't not do that, right? So now I want to make sure they're in an environment where they have peace and safety and security. I mean, I don't want anybody like picking them up in a van and raping them, right? So I'm gonna that's an extreme, right? So I'm involved in the society that I'm belonging to, and so being involved in the society I'm belonging to, I'm going to make sure that there's a safe culture for them. Now, in order to do that, I have to actually extend that to other people who are around them. I mean, the neighborhood, the city, the government, the state, the country, and the world, to some small degree, that this world is a safer place for the people that I bring into this country and in my world. So I don't see that there's any contradiction for saying that cultural relativism is not true because I like arbitrarily chose it. It's something that everybody does. Problem is, you don't recognize that you're a cultural relativist and you don't know it. Because your Christianity is different than the Christianity of Africa, or the Christianity of Asia, or the Christianity of South America. You don't understand that in Africa they're burning witches, in Indonesia they're sacrificing babies. You don't understand it, because that's part of the problem. Because in the Bible we have that kind of stuff. I find the most interesting case of that was that God in Jeremiah and Ezekiel was upset with them for sacrificing children for their babies. So he says, "You will eat your babies." What? Are you serious? So the punishment for sacrificing your babies, I'm sorry, I'm getting loud. No, because babies are involved. The punishment is you shall eat your babies. I'm sorry.
That's in Jeremiah. You got Bible for that?
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay.
I just don't have it at my fingertips. Okay. So you are cultural relatives because you say, well, that's not for me. No, that doesn't count. No, there's a reason why not.
Let him answer.
So the culture then determines what's right or wrong.
That's what I think he's saying.
So if the culture is racist...
It's not the individual culture. It's society as a norm.
Is that what you're saying now?
Are
you saying the culture, so if the culture is Nazi Germany,
Look,
we have to go along with what...
I'm just honestly asking. The species as a whole. Because we were evolved as a societal species, we understand what it means to cohabitate. We understand that we don't want to piss off all of our peers.
He's saying he's a cultural relativist. Not what you're describing.
You are, and I'm saying you are as well. I'm saying
keep going.
You can claim that. You can claim that all you want.
Okay.
But you're as much.
So I think what they're doing in Indonesia and the other place that you mentioned that is morally wrong.
No, I do too.
So I'm not a cultural relativist.
No, that doesn't make you a cultural relativist.
It does, actually. Because that's a moral absolute against being violated, and that's a moral absolute for all people. For all
have you
so let me just say this, right? Yeah. You can't claim to get your morals from the Bible.
I don't claim to get my morals from the Bible.
Well, good. Then we're in agreement.
Let me ask, maybe
you get it from your culture.
Make sure I'm understanding. Killing babies for fun.
It's bad.
Is it objectively wrong, or only because only because our culture?
Murder is wrong. Killing babies is wrong. Raping women is wrong.
So you're not a cultural relativist.
We have a definition of what is moral and what is immoral, and all too often religion violates our definition of what is moral and what is immoral.
But that's not really what I'm asking. I'm asking what makes it wrong.
Yeah, what's grounding your belief?
How do you ground your
look? Richard Swinburne, you know the guy, right?
Yep. Personally.
Me too. He's one of arguably the best Christian apologists ever, next to Alvin Plantinga and William Lane Craig, the 3 best, right?
Well, you got Aquinas.
No.
Whatever. We got
Why do they still exist?
Touche. Touche. But in the recent decades,
Okay.
right?
Living.
Agreed, right? Swinburne doesn't see there's any reason to think that there's an argument from morals to the existence of God. He says there's plenty of reasons to think that morals is evolutionary and culturally determined. I'll give you the quote. Ask me later. So if one of the best three says that, and I say it, he says something is right because it's right, something is wrong because it's wrong, morally speaking.
Okay, let me ask you a follow-up. If by evolution a sort of racist, like radically racist sort of practice developed, would that be right or would that be wrong?
It'd be
I
wrong.
have to first specify that every racist edict has been exclusively religious. So,
Well, I'm not sure that's relevant to what we're saying here.
Okay, first off,
So it sounds like you went back on what Swinburne said.
let me begin by saying what it began with in the first part of this conversation. They like to discuss
No, let's not
definitions.
stereotype. Let's not stereotype. Let's just
Definite, you fit the stereotype. They talk about definitions rather than concrete examples.
No, we've got an example. I gave you an example.
Well,
And it sounds like you went back on your cultural relativism to say this is an objective wrong. So that's not
it's
cultural relativism.
objectively wrong for human species in this day and age, and that's
Why?
all. That's because we've evolved to the point where we think that's wrong, and that's
But
all.
what if,
That's all
here's
we've
a
got.
hypothetical.
And it doesn't.
It was right at one point in history.
No, that was never right.
Well, I would agree with you, but
I think, but see what
the
you're
simple
doing.
definition is it is immoral to inhibit somebody else's happiness or beneficial lifestyle for no necessity. If you don't have to, if you don't have to inhibit anybody else's happiness or health or well-being, then it is immoral for you to do that just for your personal gain. That's a simple definition, and once you have the definition, then you have what we could call an objective morality, which Christianity does not have, because all they have is God saying that God's personal subjective opinion on
Louder!
qualifies as objective. No, it's not. It's the guy who's pretending to talk for God, who isn't talking for God. He's just making up shit and pulling it out of his ass, claiming to talk for God, which makes it a subjective morality, not objective. Objective means you have a definition of it. So
try to be even more respectful.
Oh, by the way, Marty in his one of the blogs said he used 1 Samuel 15, where God says, I'm sure you're familiar with this, kill the women, the children, the donkeys, the camels, spare no one. So is that the morality we want to follow?
Of course not. He knows that.
let's do this.
Well, no, let him answer.
Don't we have a break?
Or do you want to save it and think about
Let's
it?
do that after the break.
Okay.
Come back. But here's what we're going to do. I've got a video clip from my interview earlier this summer with John, and I want to play that after the break.
Is that about the Jesus existing and stuff?
Yeah, and I have a challenge. So I want to play that.
Johnny, got you on tape, baby.
Because that came up at the club, and we never got the answer from you. Okay?
Me. The issue of morality or immorality, cultural relativism or not, you asked me, and I gave you my answer. It's irrelevant. I'm going to tell you why. Where's RN? Did you kick him out? RN, he's here in spirit. He's here in spirit. Because if we evolved, if in fact we evolved, then the issue of morality has nothing to do with the truth. We have to adjust. We have to figure it out. Figure it out for ourselves. And if we end up killing each other and raping each other and eating babies, we don't like that. We don't want to do that, right? Nobody wants to do that. But it has nothing to do with the truth of evolution. Either evolution is true or it's not. The results, you're kind of picking on the results in a way. It's like saying, okay, well, if that's the case, then this. Well, we argue not this, right? And we argue that you are in the same boat as us when it comes to morality. We all got to figure it out. You refuse to figure it out. You have a Bible, and you interpret that and gerrymander around.
Okay, so what do you think?
But if evolution is the case, it doesn't really matter. This is an irrelevancy.
So are you like a fictionalist? Like you would say yes, murdering and eating babies
No!
is wrong, but that's just a useful fiction.
What you're saying is
I'm trying to
irrelevant.
get-
What you're saying is irrelevant. Evolution, you scoff, you scoff.
No,
If
I
evolution is
haven't
the
been
case,
yelled at like this for a while, so keep on.
I'm not done yet. If evolution is the case, then whether we are beasts and we are acting like animals to eat and be eaten, which we see every day, if you're like we're looking at the YouTube videos about spiders and scorpions and who knows what. If evolution is the case, evolution is the case. We have to deal with it. To say, for instance, that you can't believe you can't be an atheist because you can't account for morality is actually irrelevant to the issue at hand. Right?
Okay, well, here's what we're going to take our break before we solve any more of the world's problems. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a 10-minute break. You're going to be in timeout, though. Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break. There's coffee in there. There's dessert. If you get dessert when you eat, you push the button on the coffee and that'll start it. What happened? Somebody didn't already do that. And then we're going to come back and then we'll do that video too. But we can pick up.
And we are going to address the 1 Samuel 15, which caused Maudie to maybe have shaky ground. So hopefully you'll help him out.
Okay, let's take a 10-minute break. Back in 10 minutes.